Hey guys, we're going to go over the ethics of home DNA testing and the use of law force with these data breaches as well. So, one of the questions that comes to mind is the what happens to a DNA business when it goes out of business, right? So that all of that DNA data that has been given to it is potentially going to be sold or transferred to another company. Some states have laws that provide control over that genetic data, allowing individuals to delete the data that was sent in under these kinds of circumstances. But once you give that DNA data to a company, it's still possible to link that genetic information back to you through other means. Really, it comes down to what is in those privacy procedures and everything that happens when something like that occurs. So, who should have access to this DNA or genetic information? So, only you and your healthcare providers, um, and a third party if you authorized it too. So these databases have recently been used in catching cold case killers or more serious criminal charges, right? And this is because a lot of the DNA that was collected was unable to be used just because we didn't have the technology to do so. So now that we do, or now that we're finding other ways, we're using these DNA databases to kind of figure out who might be committing these crimes, right? But by doing that, they're also going through the DNA or genetics of people who are not involved or are just simply like caught in the crossfires, if you will. And is that a means of is that ethically or morally okay? Even if we're like finding someone who's doing something so wrong, right? So law enforcement should have clear guidelines on how to access consumer DNA based databases, and this should come along across with like discrimination and all these other fine tuning laws that should be clear when law enforcement goes into it. So, what rights do we have over our own DNA? So there are a couple rights that we have. We have the right to privacy through the Fourth Amendment, which protects DNA samples from the government overreach. Um, by by your DNA is yours, and without that authorized agreement, it's not to be given without a warrant of some sort. You also have a right to access genetic information. Um, the just an access to access your own. And there's also a right to be free of genetic discrimination, which is called GINA, right? The Genetic Information Discrimination Non-Discrimination Act, which makes it illegal for like employers to use genetics to make employment decisions or discrimination in insurance areas, stuff like that. If you have identical twins, which we know identical twins share a lot of the same DNA, should both parties consent for its use? And yes, both parties should because you're putting your DNA along with someone else's. So both parties should have to put consent into that DNA since it does belong to them. What recourse do you have if the company database is hacked or your genetic information is leaked or misused? So you can always file a lawsuit against the company, seek any kind of compensations for damages related to emotional distress or financial losses through this, or even potential future health risks associated with the misuse. The breach should be reported to any relevant authorities, and at that point, yeah, to contact a lawyer and seek compensation for whatever you feel happened through that misuse or was potential to happen. And does the DNA evidence to convict criminals exonerate the wrongly accused, justify potential invasions of privacy? So, storing a person's DNA profile in a database, even if they haven't committed a crime, can be seen as a significant intrusion into their privacy, potentially leading to discrimination based on that genetic information. And access to the DNA data could be abused by law enforcement or other entities, which is why it's so important that we have those laws like the GINA or the Fourth Amendment that protects these DNI samples from any type of government overreach. Government and law authorities using DNA databases that was not designed for government use is a violation of the right to privacy and the Fourth Amendment protecting those rights.